To begin my life at the beginning of my life.
Master Copperfield, I believe. I hope I see you well, sir.
Thank you. I hope I see you well.
I am, thank heaven, quite well. I have received a letter from Mr. Murdstone, in which he mentions he would desire me to take you into an apartment at the rear of my house. My name is Wilkins Micawber, at your service, sir. Under the impression that your peregrinations in this metropolis have not as yet been extensive, and that you might have some difficulty in penetrating the arcana of the modern Babylon in the direction of my house, I have called this evening to install you with the knowledge of the nearest way.
Thank you, sir.
My dear, allow me to present Master David Copperfield, who, as you know, is to reside under our roof.
How do you do, Master Copperfield?
How do you do, ma'am?
Be seated, Master Copperfield.
I never thought, before I was married, when I lived with Mama and Papa, I would ever find it necessary to take in a lodger. But Mr. Micawber, being in difficulties, all considerations of private feelings must give way.
Yes, ma'am.
If Mr. Micawber's creditors will not give him time, we must take the consequences. Blood cannot be obtained from the stone, and neither can anything at the present be obtained from Mr. Micawber.
I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am.
My dear Copperfield, times are hard, but let us, nevertheless, celebrate your arrival here with a glass of ale. Warmed and spiced, I think you will agree, to perfection.
Thank you, sir.
Your good health, Copperfield.
On such an occasion, Master Copperfield, I give you the memory of my dear Papa and Mama.
Are they dead, ma'am?
My Mama departed from this life before Mr. Micawber's difficulties commenced, or at least before they became pressing. My Papa lived to bail Mr. Micawber out several times, but then expired, regretted by a numerous circle.
My dear young friend, times are hard, but let us, nevertheless, celebrate, My dear young friend, I am older than you, and a man of some experience. And until something turns up, which I am, I may say, hourly expecting, I have nothing to bestow on you in advice. My advice is, never do tomorrow what you can do today. Procrastination is the thief of time. Color him.
My poor Papa's maxim.
My other piece of advice, Copperfield, is this. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £19, 19 and 6. Result, happiness. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £20, ought and 6. Result, misery. The blossom is blighted, the leaf is withered, the god of day goes down upon the dreary scene. And you are, in short, forever floored, as I am.
One thing is certain, Master Copperfield, I will never desert Mr. Micawber, whatever happens.
My life, I am perfectly aware of it.
You are the parent of my children, the father of my twins, the husband of my affections, and I will never desert Mr. Micawber.
It's Micawber within.
Excuse me, my dear Copperfield, a pressing appointment.
And indeed, Mrs. Micawber never did desert Mr. Micawber. Only a matter of days after my arrival in their household, she followed her husband with their family into the King's Bench prison for debtors.
I remember young Copperfield. He simply disappeared. It was while my wife and I and our poor, unfortunate family were domiciled, as one might say, as guests of His Majesty, that he simply disappeared. I haven't seen him since.
A very old friend.
Copperfield, is it possible?
Mr. Micawber! What a splendid surprise!
My dear Copperfield, this is indeed a most extraordinary meeting. Copperfield, my dear fellow, how do you do?
I am so glad to see you. And how is Mrs. Micawber?
Oh, she is tolerably convalescent. She would be rejoiced, Copperfield, to renew her acquaintance with one who has proved himself in all respects a worthy minister at the sacred altar of friendship. Do you wish to see Mr. Heap?
Mr. Heap? No. I know the house of old. I'll find my way upstairs.
You know, of course, Mr. Heap is now Mr. Wickfield's partner.
Yes, I had heard. Confound him.
We have become the tenants of his old house. It is humble, to quote a favorite expression of my friend Heap, but it will suffice until a more ambitious domiciliary accommodation turns up.
Do you see much of Mr. Wickfield?
Not much. Mr. Wickfield is, I dare say, a man of excellent intentions, but he is, in short, he is obsolete.
I'm afraid his partner seeks to make him so. Dora, this is Mr. Micawber, of whom I have so often spoken.
Absolutely delighted. Delighted. I hope Mr. Wickfield is well, Mr. Micawber.
Forgive this intrusion, charming ladies, but circumstances beyond my individual control brought me to London to consult with Mr. Traddles, who suggested we should visit you immediately.
Allow me to introduce Mr. Dick.
Mr. Dick, your humble servant.
Gentlemen, I never was better pleased to see you. A glass of punch, Mr. Micawber.
My dear Copperfield, your cordiality overpowers me. Yours too, sir. Indeed, my dear sir, you are quite good.
I hope Mr. Wickfield is well, Mr. Micawber.
As well as can be expected, under the most trying circumstances, ma'am.
And dear Agnes?
Well enough, my dear Mrs. Copperfield. Miss Wickfield is, as she always is, the only starry spot in a miserable existence.
How do you find yourself?
Indifferent, my dear sir.
You must keep up your spirits and make yourself as comfortable as possible.
My dear sir, you overpower me. I am deeply sensible of your cordiality.
A glass of punch, Mr. Micawber, and forget whatever is on your mind in pleasanter reminiscences.
Or confide to our friends, Mr. Micawber, what you confided to me this afternoon.
Gentlemen, do with me as you will. I am as straw upon the surface of the deep, and am tossed in all directions by the elements.
You are a very old, dear friend of my nephew, Mr. Micawber. I hope you are well. I wish I had had the pleasure of meeting you before as well.
Madam, I wish I had the honor of knowing you at an earlier period. I was not always the wreck you at present behold.
I hope Mrs. Micawber and your family are well.
They are as well, ma'am, as aliens and outcasts could ever hope to be.
Lord bless you, what do you mean?
The subsistence of my family, ma'am, trembles in the balance. My employer, ma'am, Mr. Heap, once did me the favor to observe to me that if I were not in the receipt of stipendiary emoluments appertaining to my engagement with him, I should probably be a mountebank about the country, swallowing a sword blade and eating the devouring element. For all I can perceive to the contrary, my children still may be reduced to seek a livelihood by personal contortion, while Mrs. Micawber abets their unnatural feats by playing the barrel organ.
Mr. Micawber, whatever is the matter?
What is the matter? What is the matter? Villainy is the matter! Baseness is the matter! Deception, fraud, conspiracy are the matter! And the name of the whole atrocious mess is Heap!
I knew it!
The struggle is over! I will lead this life no longer! I'll put my hand in no man's hand until I have blown to fragments the detestable serpent Heap! I will partake of no one's hospitality until I have moved Mount Vesuvius to eruption on the abandoned rascal Heap. Refreshment underneath this roof, particularly punch, would choke me, unless I had previously choked the eyes out of the interminable cheat and liar Heap. I'll say nothing, and see no one, and live nowhere until I have crushed to undiscoverable atoms the transcendent and immortal hypocrite and perjurer Heap! No more to say, or listen to persuasion. Go immediately. Bear society upon the track of the devoted and doomed traitor Heap! If there is a scoundrel on this earth with whom I have already much. That scoundrel's name is Heap.
This is a conspiracy.
Now we will refer this question to Mr. Micawber, if you please.
In an accumulation of ignominy, want, despair, and madness, I entered the office, or as our lively neighbor the Gaul would term it, the bureau of the firm, nominally conducted under the appellation of Wickfield and Heap, but in reality wielded by Heap alone. Heap, and only Heap, is the mainspring of the machine. Heap, and only Heap, is the forger and the cheat.
The devil take you. I will be even with you.
Come at me again, you! Keep coming for me! And if your head is human, I'll break it! Come on!
Mr. Micawber, you must restrain yourself from such extravagant gestures. Pray, continue with your denunciation.
Thank you, my dear Copperfield. These stipendiary emoluments, in consideration of which I had entered into the service of Heap, were not defined beyond the pittance of 22 shillings and 6 per week. Need I say, it soon became necessary for me to solicit from Heap pecuniary advances towards the support of Miss Micawber and our blighted but rising family. Need I say, this necessity has been foreseen by Heap, that those advances were secured by IOUs, and I was thus enmeshed in the web Heap spun for the falsification of business. Mr. Wickfield was imposed upon, kept in ignorance, and deluded in every possible way. Yet, all the while, the ruffian Heap was professing unbounded gratitude to and unbounded friendship for that much abused gentleman. Thus, my charges against Heap are as follows. First, he obtained the signature of Mr. Wickfield from documents of importance, representing them to be other documents of no importance. He induced Mr. Wickfield to empower him to draw out a particular sum of trust money, amounting to £12,614, 2 and 9pence, and employed it to meet pretended business charges and deficiencies, which had either already been provided for or never really existed. He gave, throughout this proceeding, the appearance of having originated in Mr. Wickfield's own dishonest intention, and of having been accomplished by Mr. Wickfield's own dishonest act, and has used it ever since to torture and constrain him.
You shall prove this.
Ask Heap, Mr. Traddles, who lived in his house after him, will you?
The fool himself, and lives there now.
Ask Heap if he ever kept a pocketbook while living in that house, or ask him if he ever burnt one there. If he says yes and asks you where the ashes are, refer him to a certain Wilkins Micawber, and he will hear something not at all to his advantage. In his hand, in the pocketbook, are several imitations of Mr. Wickfield's signature, defaced by fire, but legible to anyone. And so we come to the second charge. Heap has systematically forged to various documents, entries, and books the signature of Mr. Wickfield. Third and last, I am now in a position to show that the weaknesses, the faults, the very virtues, the parental affections, and the sense of honor of the unhappy Mr. Wickfield have been, for years, acted on and worked to the base purposes of Heap. And this, his last act, completed but a few months since, was to induce Mr. Wickfield to execute a relinquishment of his share in the partnership. Bankrupt, as Mr. Wickfield believed, alike in circumstances, in all other hope and in honor, his whole reliance was upon this monster in the garb of man, who, by making himself necessary to him, had achieved his destruction. All this I undertake to show, probably much more.
Agnes, don't cry.
Pardon me, I have now concluded. It merely remains for me to substantiate these accusations, and then, with my ill-starred family, to disappear from the landscape upon which we appear to be an encumbrance.
Where are the books? Some thief has stolen the books.
I took them this morning.
Don't be uneasy. They have come into my possession.
You are in the position of receiving stolen goods.
Under such circumstances, yes.
You know what I want.
A straight waistcoat.
my property! Mr. Micawber, you have done us all a great service, for which we are very grateful. What will you do now?
Madam, I know not. Poverty, misery, houselessness, hunger, rags, tempest, and beggary have so often been the lot of my poor, unfortunate family. What else can the future hold?
I wonder, Mr. Micawber, that you have never turned your thoughts to emigration.
It was the dream of my youth, and the fallacious aspiration of my riper years.
Really? Why then have you never gone?
Capital, madam, capital. That is the only difficulty, my dear Miss Trotwood.
Capital? But you have done us all a great service, and what could we do that would be half as good as to find you the capital?
But if a sufficient sum could be advanced, say at 5% per annum, to allow time for something to turn up.
Could be, can be, and shall be, as soon as you say the word.
There is but one question, my dear ma'am, I could wish to ask. Are the circumstances of the country such that a man of my capabilities would have a fair chance of rising in the social scale?
There is no better position for a man who is industrious and conducts himself well.
For a man who is industrious and conducts himself well. I entertain the conviction, my dear ma'am, that Australia is the land, the only land for myself and my family, and something of an extraordinary nature will turn up on that shore. The luxuries of the old country we abandon. On the voyage, I will endeavor occasionally to spin a yarn, and the melody of my son Wilkins will, I trust, be acceptable at the galley fire. Porpoises and dolphins will often be spotted athwart our bows, and either on the starboard or the larboard quarter, objects of interest will be continually described. In short, the probability is, by the time that Maytop stationed in the crow's nest cries, "Land ho!" we shall be very considerably astonished.
My dear Copperfield, Mr. Micawber is going to a distant country, expressingly in order that he may be fully understood and appreciated for the first time. I wish him to take his stand upon the vessel's prow and firmly say, "This country I have come to conquer. Have you honors? Have you riches? Have you posts of profitable pecuniary emoluments? Let them be brought forward. They are mine."
My love, I am always willing to defer to your good sense. What will be, will be.
Ah, here comes Steerforth. You cannot be considered formally received into the school until you've met Steerforth.
Ah, the new boy. Hello, Treadles. Good halls.
Yes, thank you, Steerforth.
How are you, Copperfield? I'm Steerforth, the one boy in the school on whom Mr. Creakle never ventures to lay a hand. What money have you got, Copperfield?
7 shillings.
You'd better give it to me to take care of. Perhaps you'd like to spend a couple of shillings or so on a bottle of currant wine by and by up in the bedroom. You belong to my bedroom, I find.
Oh yes, I should like that.
Very good. You'll be glad to spend another couple of shillings or so in almond cakes, and another in fruit, eh? I say, young Copperfield, you're going it. Say, what's that book in your pocket?
Peregrine Pickles, sir.
And do you read a lot of books?
Oh yes, I've read Roger Random, Humphrey Clinker, The Vicar of Wakefield, and of course, Robinson Crusoe.
Do you recollect them?
Oh yes, I have a good memory.
Then I tell you what, young Copperfield, you shall tell them to me. I can't get to sleep very early tonight, and I generally wake rather early in the morning. We'll go over them one after another, and we'll begin with Robinson Crusoe. How's that?
I'll certainly try my best, sir.